Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Very Best Podcast, an interview show focused on our personal connection to the Pokemon franchise and what it means to us. With me today is the co-host of Normandy FM, writer at Kotaku, and Raichu's #1 fan on the internet, electrifying guy, Ken Shepard. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad that my reputation precedes me to be known as Raichu's #1 fan.
So for every guest, I try to find a trainer class that fits them. For some guests, it's harder than others. For you, it was like, okay, what's the trainer title for an electric trainer? And it was pretty easy to find. Yeah. So thank you again for joining me. We're going to start off the show with Fast Five. This is the one part of the show that you weren't privy to before us recording. It's a set of 5 lightning round questions, basically icebreakers to get us into the groove of talking about Pokemon. There's no right or wrong answers. I mean, technically there are right answers, but don't worry too much about it. It's more of like top of head, what comes to your mind first. Are you ready to take on these 5 questions?
We're going to find out.
Okay, first up. Before it was changed to say Caparaja in Pokemon Legends Arceus, what was Raichu's electricity ability? Sorry, I fumbled that. What was Raichu's electricity able to knock out in its Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon Sun Pokédex entries?
Indian elephant?
Yeah, and then it was changed. I never knew that. Doing research for this episode, I was like, oh, that's surprising. It's very rare in the Pokemon series when they mention like real animals and it always catches you off guard. It's like, why? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
so
that's like one of the weird things about... No, I don't know if like the format of this is, we can talk about them after, or if we're just like rapid fire questions. But like one of the interesting things about that is I constantly see that Pokedex entry referenced when people were talking about like are real animals in the Pokemon world, because it's like one of the most easy examples to point to, because like the early anime episodes had like what appeared to be like birds, I think, but that one is the one that's like, okay, that's documented in like the world of the games, but yeah, it has since been changed.
Yeah, because it also implies that India exists in the world of Pokemon. Not just the animal itself. Question number 2. What is the most overrated Gen 1 Pokemon?
Ooh, okay, so I know like the answer that most people would say is Charizard, but my brother, that's his guy. Like that's his Raichu for me. So like I didn't need to come up with a different answer that will not offend him deeply. Damn, is it Mewtwo? Maybe.
Is that your I mean, there's no wrong answer. It's just whatever you decide.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna go with Pikachu, being a Raichu guy. You know?
No, I mean, to me, those are like the same guy. That's the same Pokemon. That, you know, just a different stage of his life.
Okay, fair. Question number 3. Which Mass Effect or Dragon Age party member would make the best trainer?
Ooh, shoot, I'm trying to think of like who's like the most compassionate. Tally is probably up there for Mass Effect. Like I envision her as like being very caring towards Pokemon, and I think that's, you know, that's really key. That's really important. Dragon Age, I would say I'm in the middle of replaying Dragon Age the Veilguard right now, and I think Harding actually, for the same reasons as Tally, like it's probably my answer there, because again I think that she has like a, although Davern would be like really good too, because he like his whole thing is training animals. I guess those are like 2 different ends of that spectrum. Like one person's like very caring, one person is very like kind of like tough love coach kind of guy. So those are my answers.
Nice. I wrote down Thane and Davern were my 2 choices for that. Question number 4. Which of these is not a Pokemon trainer class? So you're trying to find the odd man out. A. Poison Tongue Boy. B. Lady in Suit. C. Pokesavant. D. Linebacker.
I hope it's A.
So, that's wrong. Poison Tongue Boy is from Battle Revolution, which I didn't know about. That's crazy.
Okay.
Lady in Suit is from Coliseum, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
3, Pokesavant is the fake answer. That's one I came up with, which sounds like it would be in a game because they have like Pokemaniac and stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe Savant isn't the. Maybe it's too heady of a word for them to use, I guess. And number 4, Linebacker, which is one I don't remember from Black and White, which I thought was very funny to put an American sports position from football, American football in there. I didn't know about that either. It didn't come to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Poison Tongue Boys, such a weird trainer class name. And the last question here, this is probably an easy one for you, a softball. What was the name of Raichu originally? What? Sorry, I butchered it again.
Yeah, go
What
ahead.
was the name of Raichu's originally planned evolution?
Gorochu.
Yeah, and I have a little blurb here, which you already probably know about. Ken Sugimori stated it was omitted from Pokemon Red and Green as the staff found that the game balance was better without it, and the limited game space meant that some Pokemon originally designed to evolve twice were changed to evolve only once, which that was
Mm-hmm.
pretty neat.
Yeah. That is like one
And the
of
design is crazy. It's like sharp teeth.
yeah, horns and shit. And like a lot of people kind of say that the spirit of that lives on in like the Mega Raichu designs, which I think is I actually think that's a really cool sort of detail about the Mega Raichu designs, is that it kind of feels like it embodies an entire history of that
Yeah.
evolutionary line. But it is kind of like the wild thing about Gorochu is I always think like, oh my, I don't know, like obviously my trajectory in life probably would not have been very different, but I think like the image I have of this series would like largely be different because Gorochu probably would have been one of my favorite Pokemon. Um, because again, like to me, it's like I envision that as like one character over the course of like the
Yeah.
entire evolutionary line. And so for me, that would have been like that would have been my guy. That would have been my ace. And yeah, it's an interesting thing to like look back on and wonder about how things might have been different.
Yeah, the butterfly effect of it all.
Mm-hmm.
One little change, yeah. So we're going to be heading into first steps. This is basically talking about your initial journey with Pokemon.
Mm.
Everyone remembers their first time picking up and playing this franchise. So I want to know, Ken, how did you first learn about Pokemon? Was it in school? Was it a commercial? What was it?
So it was one of those weird things where like I don't know where the first time I ever heard the word like Pokemon was, or like kind of even saw it out in the world. But I know that I saw a poster for the first movie at my local theater when we were going to see something else. And I had heard the name. I think Pikachu it was at the very least like recognizable to me in some way. And you know how like when you're a kid and you get like the slightest taste of something that becomes your personality.
Yeah.
That was basically me when I saw that poster. I was like, oh, I really want to go see this movie. I want to, whatever. And it started out me and my twin brother, who he is like very, like a very important figure in my Pokemon journey, as it were. We started where we were going to like our local video store and renting episodes of the anime. Like we rented them like out of order, so it took me actually, I think, several years to actually see like the pilot episode and then kind of get
Oh, wow.
caught up in like a like sequentially had seen all these episodes, but we were just kind of like renting VHSs over the course of several months. I think the first episode I ever saw was one when Ash caught Bulbasaur. So like, yeah, we were kind of just we lived in like a very small town where everything kind of like pop culture trickled in over the course of like months and years, as opposed to everything kind of being at the cutting edge of us learning about stuff. And we also didn't have like cable or satellite, so we didn't watch like a lot of live TV. So that was really our like main way of experiencing Pokemon for a little bit. And then it kind of through toys, through games, through cards, like that, it was kind of like slowly starting to build within our elementary school. We were in first grade, I believe. And so during the height of Pokemania, it started to very quickly grow in like my friend group and become everyone's obsession for a couple years.
So you talk about your twin brother. When you guys eventually get your first game, is it you guys get one game and you share it? Do you guys each get like a version? Did you get red and he got blue? How did that work out?
So when it started out, we only got one version, which was red version, which we got for that same like birthday year from our grandmother, and because we'd been like obsessed enough at that point where like our birthday was primarily a Pokemon themed thing. I still have somewhere in my like my box of sorts, I have like my very first Pikachu plush, which I know a lot of people like that grew up in the era will recognize, because it's that I think everyone had that one. And so when we went to go visit my grandparents in South Carolina, one grandmother got us red version, and I think we'd forgotten So, like we didn't bring the Game Boy, so we were like, oh no, we can't play it. And then like our parents had like caught wind that we did not bring it and brought it themselves. Um, and so we shared red version, and so basically it was kind of like, we passed the Game Boy back and forth, but like we were kind of like negotiating what our party is going to look like because we can only have 6 Pokemon, but there are two of us and we have different things we want. So we like obviously started with Charmander because again, like Charizard is my brother's favorite Pokemon. We caught a Pikachu before we really moved forward too much in the game. And from then it was kind of like modular, like who do we find on the way to where we're going. So it was for that initial game, it was us sharing a game. But then I think Christmas, it must have been that year. I got yellow version, and so like that was my game, and then red became his game, and from then on out, it was always one of us got one version of the other, and we kind of established that like he would get the first version of whatever the pair was, and I would get the second one because Gold and Silver came out, and I really wanted Lugia. Like I really wanted Lugia on my team. Like I was really big into the movie 2000 and loved Lugia at a very young age, which is surprising because I kind of feel like I've drifted away from the Pokemon now. But it did set us on the path of like he gets the first game, I get the second game, with the only outlier of that being the Let's Go games because it was Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and so like I obviously got Let's Go Pikachu. And so yeah, it's kind of been we had like a built-in sort of trade system now because we both always get the other version, so neither of us are without the ability to get any Pokemon that we want.
That's awesome. So we've had a couple of guests who have siblings who also grew up playing Pokemon alongside them, and I always feel a little bit jealous because I have an older sister, couldn't care less about Pokemon, about
Sure.
3 years older than me. So growing up, I never had a trade partner until I was like 8, and I ended up moving next to my friend Daniel, who's been my lifelong friend. And since then, it's kind of similar to you and your brother, where it just works out that one of us wants one version and the other one wants the other. I really wanted Sword, he really wanted Shield. I really wanted Blue, he really wanted Red. I really wanted Silver. I'm a big Lugia guy too. He really wanted Gold. So it's really neat when that works out. But for people who have siblings who grew up with Pokemon, it's just something that I wish I had because, like I said, my sister couldn't care less. So obviously we know you love Pikachu and we love Raichu, so we're going to kind of exclude them from this question. But when you got that game, you got Red and you and your brother were working through it. Who was the first non-starter you fell in love with as a Pokemon?
I think especially when it comes to like Kanto, I have like a few answers that immediately come to mind, and one of them was actually probably Arcanine because I think the first time I ever got like a booster pack of trading cards, an Arcanine card was in it, and it was like the one in the pack that I was like really attached to. 'Cause I think at that age I like also didn't really understand what booster packs were because I was like, where's the Pikachu card? Where's the Raichu card? Like and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you sweet summer child, you have no idea how this works. So I do remember like not being emotionally regulated enough. Like I think I did cry when I didn't get a Pikachu card because I didn't understand it at the time. But I did once like the dust settled, became really attached to Arcanine. Other non-starters in Kanto that like really to this day still stick with me are Golem and Starmie.
Hell
Starmie particularly right now has been they're like a bench Pokemon to me in terms of like I have like my party of 6 that I have in my head, and then like they're like number 8 or number 7 or 8, and so they end up kind of being like they were big on my ZA team. They're very they're one of my like game changers in my champions team right now. Starmie's probably like, the most definitive answer of the two. 'Cause I haven't really played a lot with Golem since. I did definitely get him again in Let's Go, but I don't feel like he appeared as much in my parties after. But I do have like actually a really strong affinity for Alolan Golem as well. So those 3 I think are probably the answers.
Well, the funny thing is, I don't know if Golem would be on a lot of people's lists in the era that we grew up in with Pokemon. Not because people don't like him. I just think maybe a lot of people didn't have a chance to have it because you needed to trade to get it. I like those answers though. Starmie, very underrated. I'm still indifferent on the Mega evolution of Starmie. It's a little weird, but it's cool. I like it when they get weird.
Yeah, I'm like caught between a rock and a hard place of like there were so many like cooler designs that they could have gone with, and also that thing whips ass when I bring it on to champions. So I'm like, I guess I have to give it its props for that.
So we talked about you and your brother growing up with Pokemon. We talked about you falling in love with these non-starters. What is your, maybe it doesn't have to be a specific memory, maybe it can be a collection of them, but what is like your favorite Pokemon memory when you look back on all of these years of both covering it and enjoying the series as a kid?
Oh, there's so many. What? Because like I kind of divide my like Pokemon fandom into like different sagas, more or less. Of like, okay, there was also Pokemania when we were very very young. Um, there was a point when my brother and I were, and this is probably like I think the most defining in terms of like how I view the series today. Uh, my brother and I actually I don't know how old you are, Jared. So I don't know if like this would be completely lost
I'm
on me.
34, about to be 35.
Okay, then you're older than me, so like you probably know what this is. So One Up had uh this sort of like social media platform, like kind of before like Twitter existed and things like that. And it was like this blog sphere with also these uh these clubs that people made of like for various topics where they would discuss things. And the one time that something I did there like really popped off was when I made this like Pokemon RP club where people were just like kind of like making this collective Pokemon story together. And
Oh, that sounds
that
fun.
was leading up to the Diamond and Pearl era, and I think that was really the point. It was the point where my quote unquote canon party came together as I was sort of like writing that story alongside a bunch of other people, including my brother. Um, and I think it kind of established Pokemon as, cause like for a lot of people, Pokemon is like min maxing stats and trying to get like the quote unquote optimal team to take online and to take tournaments and stuff like that. I was like, I think for that period of my life, that was when I like kind of established Pokemon more as like an RPG with a cast of characters that I liked, as opposed to this thing that felt like modular, like, oh, I'm just gonna go and pick whoever or like catch whoever I feel like in this playthrough, or I'm gonna uh not have like a set party or something like that. But I think that's when I became very attached to a specific set of Pokemon that in like future games I would kind of have to like I would catch. It was more like when the national decks like went away. It was kind of like those six Pokemon were guaranteed like a spot in my party, and then I would kind of have to find things to fill in the gaps. Um, and it just kind of like completely changed my understanding of
Perspective on
how.
it.
Yeah, because like like a lot of people, like I have some friends who are like, oh yeah, every time I start a new Pokemon game, I am trying to make a completely new party of Pokemon that are specific to that region or something like that. And I'm like, for me, I'm always trying to like my number one thing is I'm trying to find Raichu, and then I'll figure everything else after. Um, and so yeah, I've had different parties over every game, but there's usually at least some of those Pokemon in each of them, depending on who's available each game.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. We've talked about this on the show in multiple episodes too. Of there seems to be two distinct ways to approach whenever a new Pokemon game comes out. You have your type, which is very much play the greatest hits, add some new people if you want to, and then you have the people. I'm very much in this other camp, the stickler that you mentioned of no. When I start a new game, I want to have a party of all Pokemon from that region. For me, partially it's because I want to learn those new Pokemon, especially now that we're nearing 1,000. Uh, I want to learn their names and get familiar with them and give them the time of day that I would have Gen 1. And also with Pokemon Home, the way I approach it is like, if I'm a trainer, I already have my Arcanine. I don't need another Arcanine. I have my guy I've had since the beginning. I've had these Pokemon with me the entire time. So it's always cool to me to hear the approach from people because, like with most things, it doesn't really matter. It's a video game. Do what you want to do. But I do get the sense of like, well, no, this is my guy. I want to go get him. And then, like you said, everything will get figured out after that. But on the other end, it's like I get wanting it to feel new. And maybe that is just because some people want to justify the point of playing a new Pokemon game. Well, I have to use the new Pokemon or else what's the point? But at the end of the day, do whatever the hell you want to do. You know what I mean? Who cares?
I think something that like really, because like when the National Dex stuff happened, I think something that like I kind of like the perspective shift for me, like going into Sword and Shield, was so like in the anime, Ash has Pikachu, but he catches new Pokemon every time he goes to a new region, and I think that was like just the sort of because of that six that I have, Raichu was initially the only one in that game before the DLC,
Okay.
and so I was like, I think that was just like a moment that like it kind of clicked to me. It was like, okay, I, if I'm going to explore these new places, I need to be open to new experiences and new meeting new people on Pokemon, and but I think as long as I have my guy with me, I think I have that like grounding element of like, okay, this is still me experiencing this world through the lens in which I have always experienced it, but being more open to new experiences. And I think it's kind of probably gone now because I think the website's kind of been crashing. Um, I wrote for a site called Fanbyte through 2019 to 2022, and one of my like first like big like confessional editorials that I wrote there was actually about how like I was trying to move out of my hometown at around this time, and then the pandemic happened, so that was cut short. But I was having to like accept like I'm going to leave people behind as I continue to move forward with my life and as I continue to expand my horizons and just find my place in this world. And I think if I've got like this one grounding thing, I can be open to new experiences and trying to just not be so stuck in my ways. Because I definitely felt for a couple generations, it definitely felt like I approached catching new Pokemon in those games is like, oh, you're just this like placeholder for when I can get to the end and like trade old Pokemon into the new game, and then then I put my level 106 into the game, and it's like okay, that you lose all sense of progression there as a video game when you do that, but it was like the sentimentality of how I was viewing those games at the time, and so yeah, it's like really like weirdly neurotic and sentimental. And I think I probably have that kind of relationship with Pokemon more than any other video game series. To the point where like I mean this isn't a video podcast, but I've got my Sitting Cuties, my original six, up on my shelf right now, and it's to me they are always going to be like the stars of the Pokemon series. But I'm trying to be more open to the party looking different by the time I reach the credits of the game.
Yeah, I feel that. Ken, I'm so crazy that when Fire Red came out on the Switch right earlier this year, I made it a point where I was like, I'm not going to use any Pokemon I've used in a run before on this game. Yeah, and I don't know why I'm like that. I don't know if that's okay either. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's whatever you want to do. And I'm curious with a huge point with Pokemon Black and White, the reason a lot of people love it, and I guess the reason some people don't like it, is that it kind of forced you to use new Pokemon, right? How did you feel about that at the time? Were you kind of mad that you weren't able to get your guys?
I definitely it is one of the reasons that I don't really go back to Black and White. Especially because like, I frankly don't like the Unova decks very much. So like there aren't a lot of Pokemon on there that really compel me.
Speak to you, yeah.
Yeah. I mean I say that as a person that I have a Herdier tattoo, but I have that as a tribute to my dog that passed away. But broadly I don't like those Pokemon, and which is like a really I feel like I really want to go back to it now that I've lived in New York City for so many years, because that obviously is like a big part of that region. But generally, yeah, the Pokemon of Black and White do not do it for me. I do like the Box Legends though; they are both very good.
Hell yeah. Let's get into the Elite Four here. So this is a set of 4 unique questions I have for you. Let's start with the first one. You cover plenty of other things outside of the world of Pokemon, but specifically with it, what do you enjoy about mixing your profession with this franchise that you adore so much?
So, kind of coming back to what we're saying about how like everyone kind of views Pokemon differently, I think that's something that really it's something that can be complicated or like difficult to kind of communicate to people who aren't like in the thick of it. That like a lot of people have like a one touchstone with Pokemon, and thus it has meant something different to so many other people.
Yeah.
So like I do a mostly monthly column called Experience Share, which is I primarily try to do is like an interview driven like community. Here's how people think about this one very very specific thing in the series, or how they feel about some trend within it, or whatever it might be. Because I really love talking to people about their Pokemon experience. I love kind of hearing okay, how did you first get into it? Like, kind of what we're doing in the show is like, tell me about your Pokemon journey and like where it started, the forms it has taken, what you do and don't jive with, or like because I can talk to people who have only ever played Pokemon Go, or people that have only ever watched the anime, or people that are like a stickler for only playing the mainline games, or they play the card game and like they're very inundated in like that, frankly, like shit show of a side of the culture right now with all scalpers and stuff like that. I and those are like parts of the series that I don't even necessarily engage with. Like I'm not a huge trading card game guy. I've got a few on my shelf here that I have collected over the years that I've like I got some Raichus. I got every Professor Turo card that they have made, I believe. And but still like that's something that like kind of eludes me. Like I'm not looking to buy a bunch of packs and gamble away all my money trying to find like my chase card. I would much rather spend an exorbitant amount of money on something that I know for sure I'm going to get in the transaction, as opposed to constantly buying packs and hoping that it's going to be inside. And then again, this Pokemon Go, which like I lived in a small town before I moved up to New York City. Like that game was like just not really it wasn't very good there because like
Yeah.
there's a lot of writing out there about how like rural areas do not get support with that game that places like New York City do. And yeah, I think that's just like one of the most fascinating things about Pokemon is that it means something different to everybody, whether that is you came in through a specific part of the series, or like you have a favorite Pokemon that is different from somebody else's. Like I love hearing who everyone's favorite is, because if it's not one of the go-tos, you get something like really kind of you can tell a lot about a person by what their favorite Pokemon is, and so it's weirdly confessional if people don't necessarily feel like it is. But yeah, that's sort of like the gist of it is like there's something very specific about how Pokemon is many different things. Like what Pokemon is in the eye of the beholder, and that's kind of beautiful, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of why I've really enjoyed doing this show. I mean, so growing up, I'm a straight white dude, right? I mean, I'm technically half Latino, but I'm like I pass as like a straight white guy,
Sure.
and I love hearing from other perspectives. Like one thing I always took for granted is that it wasn't until Gen 3 that they added the female character. And it's like, I never thought about that. Like, I was always
Sure.
represented in the game, right? I never had to worry about anything. And we've had artists on the show. We've had disability reporters. We've had just people from all walks of life. And I think it's really cool to hear why they care about the series, what drew them to it, what keeps them coming back. So I totally get you on that. It's really fascinating. And yeah, to your point, hearing what somebody's favorite Pokemon is very interesting, because you hear that saying, oh, like every Pokemon is somebody's favorite. Like, no one likes Stunfisk. No one's favorite Pokemon is Stunfisk. But I guarantee you there's someone out there, when Galarian Stunfisk was announced, they were so excited because their guy got a second form. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Question number 2 here. One aspect of Pokemon that we haven't dove into here on the podcast is the online competitive, like battling aspect of it. You seem to be pretty familiar with Pokemon Champions. You've talked about it a couple times during the show so far. What draws you to it and keep you coming back and ultimately makes it enjoyable for you? Because I'm somebody who the competitive battling part of it is like on the very bottom of why I enjoy Pokemon. Sure. So I'm very curious to hear from you why it grabs you.
So I mean, the funny thing is, it actually was like at the very bottom of my like totem pole of Pokemon interest for a very long time. To the point where I kind of, in like the eras of Pokemon fandom of mine, there's definitely like a point in like Generation 5 to 7, I think, of like me just like really not. I mean, I played all the games, like I own them all, but it started to the point where, like I've never finished Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Just like I was like really starting to fall off because I didn't really have like a quote unquote like Pokemon community when I was like after my brother and I finished that story in the 1-up days. There was definitely a point where I didn't feel like I had like a really like a good foundation of like people that I was playing or talking about Pokemon with. So, like I think my interest kind of like generally waned, largely because a lot of people that I was kind of like interacting with about Pokemon were like competitive sickos that were like they were big on like, okay, take out the spreadsheet, min max your stats, who were the viable Pokemon, and like I think I've written about it on Kotaku a couple times. There was a point where I was just like having a Pokemon battle with somebody and like they were like, "Oh, why are you using Raichu? Why are you using Beautifly? Why are you using these Pokemon that aren't good?" And I was just like, "They're my friends. What the fuck do you mean?" Can I swear? Actually, I have this really bad habit of like swearing on a podcast and then asking as opposed to before.
Oh, it's perfectly fine. We try to
Okay,
limit it, but I'm not gonna bleep it or anything. It's perfectly fine. It's not a
okay,
family
I'm
friendly
like a
show,
really
but
bad
yeah.
potty mouth. It's I don't know where I get it from. Probably living in the boonies. Um, but like
No worries.
I was like, yeah, like these Pokemon are my friends and they are my favorites, and like I'm not like I'd rather lose with my favorites than win with these guys I don't even care about because they are quote unquote meta or whatever. And I'd gotten like inundated with that stuff so much in my like late teens that I was like, this kind of sucked actually. Like, I don't feel like I'm. Maybe I've suddenly grown out of Pokemon because like this is where people my age group are leaning into this series. Like maybe this isn't for me. Um, and so what actually ended up bringing me back around to the series was actually around like the Sword and Shield era of like when Detective Pikachu came out. Seeing that world in a like non-competitive light actually like really like spoke to again like this being like a world with a story and like a history and a people finding their place in it, which was like really fascinating to me, like which really kind of like harkened back to me like writing those stories with my brother and friends that we made online. And I had still kind of largely been like, I don't care at all about competitive Pokemon. Like I don't really care about like going in and sort of finding the meta team and using Incineroar like everybody else does. And so when Champions was coming out, I was actually kind of like, this is probably just not for me. I'm gonna play it a little bit for coverage, and then I'm gonna bounce. What I ended up finding was through my sheer stubbornness, which I again like if I haven't communicated that enough, like I'm very stubborn about like my view of the Pokemon world and what it means to me and the Pokemon that I want to have with me. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this for even just a little bit of coverage, I'm gonna do it with my favorites, and I'm gonna do it with the Pokemon that I actually want to play with. And so, not my whole team of six is not in the game yet, but a fair amount of them are, and my like quote unquote benched Pokemon of like Starmie and Corviknight were also there. So I was like, okay, there's enough here for me to get like a team I can tolerate. And I think what I actually ended up finding that really started to draw me to competitive play was if I'm gonna stick with those Pokemon and be like very stubborn about it, but I can find ways to subvert the meta or like react to the meta while still using my favorites, that like gives my team like an era of like unpredictability. Like people are like, oh, this isn't the same Incineroar since the Farigiraf makeup that people were typically using, and so like people don't necessarily always know what to expect when I send out Raichu and Corviknight or uh Houndoom and Torterra. And so I think something that has made like because I put like well over 100 hours in Champions now. Something again like I plan on maybe playing for a couple hours, and now it's kind of become like my go-to time killing game when I'm bored one night waiting for plans for later or something. Um, I think kind of viewing competitive Pokemon less as a bunch of like min-max stats, more like a puzzle of like I've got these pieces that synergize in one way or another, but they also can react to things that I know are probably coming. Okay, so he sends out Charizard. Okay, I know you're about to Mega Evolve him into Y, bringing on Drought, so you can use, really powerful Heat Waves. Okay, I was like, I've got Starmie, but I also know that you have Solar Beam, but I also have given my Starmie Rain Dance, and I know that it will outspeed Charizard, and so I'm gonna completely cut you off the needs there because like, you're gonna try to use Solar Beam in one turn through Drought and like the Heavy Sunlight, but because I have done Rain Dance, you're actually going to have to charge it up again, and now you've left yourself open for Starmie to just use Liquidation and take you out. And so I think there's like it's hard to like really know what to compare competitive Pokemon to because it's like partially chess, partially it feels like cards, kind of frankly feels like tic tac toe. Like if your person gets like one setup in place, they can kind of win immediately if you're not
Yeah.
also kind of reacting to them and cutting them off. And it's like that I think has made it really appealing to me because I've just kind of found like a niche to exist in competitive Pokemon where I'm like, I'm using a team that is different than the one a lot of other people are using. And yeah, maybe there are points where okay, I definitely don't feel like I have a reaction to this, but by and large, I feel like I am at least I've got somewhat of the upper hand because nobody like you know nobody well except for maybe right now because a lot of people are now that Mega Raichu's stones have come into that game. People are like, oh, everyone's kind of running Raichu now. But then I have like another weird subversion where like I use the X form a lot, where a lot of people are using the Y form because it has Zapkins that never miss. And so yeah, it's like I generally and that's the thing, like I don't know how like embedded I'm going to be in that in the long run, but I do feel like right now with Champions out, with Raichu getting his Mega Forms and me being able to take those out into online battles, I just kind of feel like it's hit like lightning has struck for me to be like really interested in this way in a way that I've never been. And I think it largely has become because of my stubbornness, because of my unwillingness to do things that everyone kind of told me growing up were necessary to actually enjoy competitive play. Because now every time that I see somebody with like the same two teams, I'm like, damn, what's it like to be a sheep? What's it like to be a person that has to follow the rain all the time? What's it like to be someone that isn't, doing
A
what everyone
sheep.
says they have to? Yeah. Uh, because yeah, like I'm not like champion ranking, but like I do all right for myself with the Pokemon that I like, the Pokemon that I want to play with.
This is so funny because your perspective on it is so similar to. So I play a lot of Magic: The Gathering,
Hmm.
and I like to just build my own decks and not go for like the standard meta decks because I just think
Sure.
it's more interesting. And I feel the same way that when you run into people, are like, "Oh, you're running that deck that everyone's running.
Yeah.
Cool. How fun is it to just be going through the motions?" I
Yeah.
feel that same
Yeah.
feeling. So it's really funny to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because my group of friends, I'm known as like the person who's most into Pokemon, right? Like the Pokemon guy. So when
Mhm.
Champions was coming out, they're like, "Oh, how is it? Is it good?" Yeah, and I was like, I didn't play it, like, which was shocking to them because I play almost every new Pokemon game that
Yeah.
comes out, like Pokopia and everything.
Mhm.
I just have no interest in it, but it's cool to hear from your perspective of like, well, I didn't either, but then I checked it out and I found what I drew happiness from, and it's
Mhm.
using my guys and finding a way to win regardless,
Mhm.
despite not using the meta that everybody does. And oftentimes you probably catch people off guard because, like you said, everyone's
Yeah.
used to, oh, so this is the meta, so the counter to this, everyone's going to be
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
this, and then you pop up and they're like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah.
I don't know how to approach this.
Yeah. And that's like
Yeah.
those are like the most interesting battles to me as well. Because like when I come across somebody that's not using the meta team, I was like, oh, that now we are both kind of like having to read each other on a level that is not again like it when you're playing against like a meta team, it's like everything that they do is like an if then statement. Like okay, you have
Yeah.
Hard Ref. I know you're about to do Trick Room. You have Innocent. I know you're about to do Fake Out, and it's like that is far less interesting to me than two people who have very irregular teams, kind of like trying to read the room and trying to figure out how to respond to things as they're coming. Because like you're not, you don't have your prepared statements for every single thing that somebody might usually have. And so like yeah, when I send up Torterra, they're like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" And it's like kind of keep you on your toes.
I really like that you've taken to it, and like you said, who knows how long you'll be invested
Sure.
in it, but it's neat to see. Um, let's get to our third question here. So this is a play on the classic F Mary Kill question, but it's evolve, delete, move. So essentially, it's you're going to choose of this group of 3 Pokemon which one you're going to give a new evolution to bring new life to it, which one you're going to delete from existence. Who cares? No one cares. Or 3, move, meaning you can move it to another region just so it fits in more aesthetically, or move
Mm.
it to give it like a new regional form, whatever you decide there. So that is the context. The first group up for you, Ken, is I labeled this quote unquote fish
Mm.
Pokemon. So we have Bruxish, Love Disc, and Aloma Mola.
So I'm gonna delete Bruxish because like just get it on my face. So what I'm actually gonna do here, and I don't know if this is cheating. So like tell me if the judges say that this does not fly. I'm gonna
Okay.
move Love Disc to Sinnoh,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna give Alomomola a new additional form that goes backwards. So I'm gonna give them a middle form that bridges the gap between Love Disc and Alomomola.
That's clever. I actually like that. That's cool. That's allowed. That's allowed. I never specified post or pre-evolution, so I'll take that. I
Mm-hmm.
like that idea. because it gives two, like, I wouldn't say useless Pokemon, but, useless Pokemon, and merges them into an evolutionary line that makes it more interesting.
Mm.
And we also assume, because it becomes a 3-stage, that Aloma Mola will actually be more quote-unquote competitively viable, you know what I mean, have better stats there. I like that. You know what's funny? So I recently, I'm a little crazy with the trading cards in that I have a binder for every generation, and I'm slowly just buying individual single cards for Pokemon. And my dream one day is to have every binder filled up with every Pokemon from that generation. I'm not doing it anytime soon. It's just like slow thing for me to do, which I think is really fun. Anyways, one of the most recent cards I bought was a full art illustration rare Bruxish, right? I just wanted to get that one out of the way. It's an ugly Pokemon. I hate it. I got the card, and I was opening up the package, and my mom had been here, and she was, I don't know what she was doing, but she saw the card, and she's like, "Oh, it's a cute fish." I'm like, "That is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. In what world is that thing cute?" And we had a whole discussion about it. I thought it was really funny. Anyways, back to the second group. I call this one miscellaneous. We have the defensive stalwart Shuckle, we have Sigilif, and we have Klefki. The overpowered, overhated Pokemon? What would you do here?
God, like one of the Shuckle I kind of just want to leave alone in some way because it's like a very niche Pokemon with like a very specific like function and place in the world, and that's just like it's perfection. Like you don't want to really fuck with it. I'm actually just gonna delete it because then I don't have to alter it in any way. It gets to live
Okay.
pristine in my mind as something that was exactly what it needs to be.
Your personal Mandela effect. It once
mhm.
existed, it no longer does.
I think I'm gonna move Klefki to Johto, and I want to get it like
Ooh.
a regional variant that's kind of like Johto's a lot more like traditional Japanese like folklore sort of deal, and like make it like a variant that's like those wooden keys that you find in like dojos and stuff. Um, that's my plan for him. And so I guess that means that Silith gets an evolution, which
Pre
I
or
don't know.
post?
It looks pretty final stage. Maybe we give this another pre-evolution.
A little hieroglyph. Okay, I like that. Klefki is so interesting to me because I think most times what I see on the internet is people wanting it to get an evolution, and it always looks like a Keyblade. That's like the go-to thing I always see. So I like sending it to Johto, moving it to a different, because usually when you think about a regional form, you're moving a Pokemon to a region that came out after it. So I like sending it back. And our last one here, this is mammals. We have Miltank, Spinda, and Komala.
I think Miltank could use a pre-evolution as well. It's kind of weird to think that those fully formed cows come out of Pokeeggs.
That baby form would go triple platinum. That thing would have so many plushies. People would love that little baby cow.
Spend is another one like Shuckle where I'm like, it does what it needs to do. It doesn't need it's already got a billion forms, I think technically. So I think we're gonna delete Spedna just so it doesn't have to be. It gets to be pristine. And then come out like, oh shoot, I used my all. I mean, I guess Koala gets moved. What? Shoot, I'm trying to think of like some sort of regional variant of a koala.
I don't know, move him to Callus and make him French some way. I don't know, give him a mustache.
Give him a baguette.
Mustache. Yeah, a baguette, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's resting on a baguette instead of a tree branch.
Yeah. Oh, see, we figured it out. We're good.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And lastly, you're getting ready to face off against the Kanto region's Elite Four, and you kind of talked about this. You have your go-to team you go to. Who is your dream team of 6?
So to be clear, do you want a dream team of Kanto Pokemon or like my dream team of 6?
Let's go Kanto region specific.
Okay, because I obviously fairly recently, well, not actually, Jesus Christ, this game's almost 10 years old. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu was my last time I really like went through the whole Kanto region. And my team there was Pikachu, who's like the stand-in for the actual answer was Raichu, but like Pikachu was the one that was in the game. So Raichu, uh, Arcanine, Starmie, Golem. Shoot, forget who.
You're missing a grass type. I don't know if you run a grass type, or I'm just thinking of the stuff you're missing on your team.
Yeah,
You have an evolution on there?
no, I'm. My hot take is I don't really like any of the evolutions that much, but I do like Eevee specifically. Um, Shoot, man. I think Machamp was in there, and then Venomoth.
Oh, okay.
Something about that sounds wrong, but that's like the answer that I'm going with right now because that's the one that comes to mind.
So no, you don't. Well, I guess poison is similar to grass, but you don't rock with grass types too much.
I mean, I do in my regular team. My actual team has Torterra.
Torterra?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that earlier.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, Venomoth is I think like the most like you feel like a replacement because another Pokemon that's on my actual team is Beautifly, and I'm like, well, I here I guess like here, damn, take another. Let me think. It's like Butterfree. I almost feel like it's too on the nose. I'm like, no, you feel like very definitive, like, oh, this is a replacement for my girl. And I'm like, no. So Venomoth feels like it exists in like this middle
A
stage
slight
of like,
pivot.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, this is one of my favorite segments of the podcast. This is a team building exercise. So I tell the guest to pick a fictional character. It could be from video games, books, film, television, and we build the perfect Pokemon team for that chosen character. Focus on which Pokemon most fit the core of that character. And this is the interesting part because it could be vibes, personality, it could be lore based, whatever you choose. We're going to each present 3 Pokemon. I wanted both of us to come with at least 6 choices, so that way we have fail-safes in case one of us picks somebody on the other's list. And you chose a character that, as familiar as I am, I'm a big Marvel guy. I also love DC, but I'm more of a Marvel guy.
Sure.
It's one of the DC characters I'm like actually least familiar with.
Sure.
I never watched the Keanu Reeves movie, so can you tell me why you chose John Constantine?
So I actually have okay. So I'm not a huge comics guy specifically. I definitely read like I read a lot of like the Green Arrow Rebirth, the Injustice comics, and you know that kind of like I guess like at this point like 10 years ago like I was reading actually a lot of DC.
Okay.
I have kind of I watched I've watched a lot of like superhero movies, superhero shows, and play a lot of superhero games like that. So like a lot of my touchstones with comic books are the adaptations, and for Constantine, I actually don't have an attachment to the Keanu Reeves version. I have an attachment to the Matt Ryan version that he he had his own show and then he was in like the Arrowverse for a while
Oh yeah.
until they wrote him off because of some like really shitty licensing deal that was. We don't need to go into that right now, but it was a very very bad day for me. But I really like John Constantine as part of it is like I really like his aesthetic. I'm really into like you know the chain smoking like beaten down rough guy that Matt Ryan I think especially portrays very well in the shows even when it feels like he's at odds with like okay like he's in Legends of Tomorrow and that shows a very like pulpy sci-fi sort of thing and he kind of gets like plopped into it and very much feels like a fish out of water in that space. But he I what's like the most like non-neurotic way to explain this? I'm really I'm really drawn to like sad queer man characters. And
Okay.
he is especially like in that continuity of like the Arrowverse and stuff like that. He is like a really broken individual that has a lot of history and a lot of like you know has to become somewhat optimistic in the face of like so much trauma that he has endured and he exists in more like the supernatural side of the DC universe so he's less of a superhero as he is like a warlock that has dealt with the underworld and demons and all this other stuff. And so I'm like drawn to him as a character, but like I'm especially drawn to his aesthetic, and I am drawn to like the visual of this like warlock detective that's like smoking in a back alley that's like barely lit by like a flickering street light. And so like in my various neuroses, like usually I'm drawn to that character like if I'm having like a very bad like a mental health episode. Like so if you ever randomly see me post a picture of John Constantine or a GIF on social media, I am probably like going through it mentally that day. And so yeah, I'm drawn to him like in a lot of ways, but like he's not even my favorite superhero specifically, but I am just drawn to him as like an entity. So yeah,
It was
that's my
such an
long
interesting pick.
Yeah.
It caught me off guard. Because like we talked about, I know you're a big like BioWare fan. I know you obviously play games and everything. And I was like, oh, John Constantine, what did pick? And I am so vaguely familiar with him that I had to do some research to
Sure.
figure out who would fit. Because outside of like, I knew he was a bit of an asshole. I knew he smoked, and I knew he was connected to the supernatural world. I didn't know he was a queer character, which was cool to learn about. No clue about that, and some of the other stuff about him kind of making deals with demons, and it's very interesting to learn a little bit more about him. So we're gonna be making his team of 6. You get to go first. Who is your first choice, Ken, for John Constantine?
So my first choice was Litwick because I can just imagine that little guy is always lighting a cigarette.
Okay, I like that. Uh, he's not a little too cute for Constantine. You think he would keep him in his pocket or something and be like, oh yeah, I need a light of cig. Let me pull this guy out.
Yeah,
I don't know how loving he is as a character.
Yeah, it's more like I imagine. Okay, like he's at like a table, like looking over clues to a case or whatever it might be, or researching some demon or something like that. And then this little guy is like sitting on the table, kind of like both as a light, like a light source, and also to light the cigarette. Um, and so like there's especially like in the original Constantine show that got canceled because God hates me, I guess. He was like often in like libraries and like looking through a lot of books and stuff like that. So I can imagine this little candle ghost guy following around.
It's cute too. It's the dichotomy of it of like this like grizzled dude, and then he pulls out this little tiny adorable little thing to light a cigarette. In the same vein, my first pick is Pokemon. I think would be drawn to the constant smoking and letting out of smoke. I had to pick Weezing for him. I thought it was a funny pick. Not only is John Constantine a chain smoker, he also is known to be a little bit toxic. So I think thematically, if it's both ways there. So I went with Weezing as my first choice.
Okay. So I'm gonna go with one of my Dream Team 6 for this. As I'm going to go with Houndoom because I just figured like a hellhound, accompanying a warlock who constantly deals with the underworld and demons and exorcisms and all that fun shit. Just visually, thematically, very appropriate.
Yeah, perfect. I like that pick a lot. I had that on my list, so I'm glad you were able to knock it there. Which one do I choose? Okay, so I think this one more for the gag joke of it is Murkrow. I think would be a funny pick just because. So Murkrow is known as a symbol of bad luck, which I recently learned. I thought it was only Absol that was kind of seen that way as like the Doombringer. Right. And I think it's funny. So it says specifically if you see it at night, it's a form of bad luck, which I also think in the world of DC, anybody who's dealing with anything, if they see John Constantine pop up, I think they also see him as a bit of bad luck for the situation, regardless of how effective he is at his job. I think he can be a little bit rough on people. So I went with Murkrow.
So this one's a deep cut, which is gonna sound weird at the beginning. Sharpedo, because there's a known gag in the like DC animated universe in which apparently King Shark and John Constantine are exes. And
oh wow.
So I was like, it's one of those things of like, oh, this reminds me of like a long lost love or whatever whatever they would have considered that relationship to be. And because John Constantine has his own demons, like he's got his own sort of things that he, things in his past that he regrets and how they went down. And while King Shark and John Constantine's relationship is mostly played as a gag, I choose to believe that it was deeper than that. And he's got this one Pokemon that kind of just like reminds him of a time in his life that might not have been so miserable.
John Constantine also feels like the type of guy who, like, even though he knows it's bad and it's not doing good for his mental health, he'd want to keep it around anyways because he likes getting that feeling every now and again. I didn't know about that. That's funny.
Yeah.
King Shark and John Constantine is a couple. I would have never imagined that pairing. Crazy.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Well, so I'll do my last pick and then we'll go over our honorable mentions that didn't make the cut. I think I'm going to go with something a little bit out of the box. And to your point with Houndoom, I was looking through Pokemon like, wow, there actually isn't a lot of Pokemon that are demon coded in their design.
Sure.
Which was quite surprising to me. I was looking through them, I was like, none of this reads like demonic or demon-esque. And then I came across Hoopa Unbound, which I thought fits most. It's obviously more of a djinn than it is a demon, but it's a troublemaker. And I think it would fit his aesthetic similar to Houndoom. It's not as metal. Obviously, Houndoom's like one of the most metal designs in all of Pokemon. But I thought it would fit because I wanted to do the touchstone of demonic relationships that he has. And you took Houndoom, so I was like, the only other one I have on the list that's similar is Hoopa Unbound.
Mm-hmm.
You want to hit us with your other honorable mentions?
Yeah, I didn't want to lean too hard into the ghost typing specifically because, otherwise we would have just been listening to a ghost gym leader thing. So my other two were Spiritomb and Gengar.
Ooh, Spiritomb. I like that pick.
Mm-hmm.
Gengar's kind of like, yeah, of course. If you ever get anybody kind of related to the ghost typing, I kind of wanted to stray away from it too. I did have Haunter written down, mostly because he's a prankster and he also is a bit of an asshole, which is similar to John Constantine. I had Zoroark. One thing I learned about John Constantine is I didn't know he was known for, at some points, being like a con artist. So obviously the shape-shifting of Zoroark seems like it fit. And then the last one I had was Espeon because I think he'd find the premonition powers useful to him of Espeon being able to feel things that are about to happen.
Right.
And it also kind of fits his aesthetic a little bit too. So I think we did a pretty good job. We had, on my end, we had Weezing, Murkrow, and Hoopa Unbound. And on your end, we had...
Houndoom, Witwick, and Sharpedo.
A pretty good team. John Constantine is in the world of things I'm familiar with. I'm thankful that you gave me that. A previous guest brought in the 11th Doctor, and I'm outside of like pop culture stuff. I'm so unfamiliar with Doctor Who.
I would have been completely.
That one was really tough for me. Yeah. Okay. So next up, we've been pretty positive overall about the world of Pokemon, but with everything we love, sometimes we feel things need to change. What do you think? This segment is called Forced Evolution. What do you think you would change about the Pokemon franchise if you can change anything about it?
I think now that champions exist, I kind of would love for like how the Legends games are like very clearly designed as single player games that are balanced as such and also are completely outside of the gym battle sort of Pokemon League setup. I do think I want more Pokemon games that are like about the world as opposed to specifically viewing it through the lens of competitive sport. And obviously that's complicated when like the verb has to be catch and battle. But that's why I specifically gravitate to the Legends games a lot. It's just because I feel like, oh, this is speaking to this universe in a way that you really kind of only ever get in like the anime most of the time, or the manga. Where it's like, okay, this world is so much more than you becoming the very best like no one ever was. And I have, again, like that was part of, I think, the reason I was kind of moving away from the series for a little bit. It's because like, I feel like we're saying the same stories over and over and over. And I definitely feel like it, in recent games, it felt like it's clear that Game Freak is kind of getting bored of that to some degree. Because like, okay, Scarlet and Violet, for all its problems, like has like a structure that does, like, okay, yeah, it does include the gyms and the Pokemon League, but it like you get to the last couple hours of the game, it's like, oh, this is a team that's been like bursting into scenes to like explore this world in new ways. And so like, yeah, when you're saying like, oh, if you could change, it kind of already feels like Game Freak is in the process of doing that. Because I think that has kept Pokemon so prevalent in my 30s now. Like I'm just like, I am constantly enamored by the stories they're telling now. Even if they, okay, the writing is still a little, it's meant to be perceived by children, so like it's kind of a little works in a lot of like
Shallow.
subtext and stuff like that, and as opposed to being like as overt with some stuff. But there's like some crazy, incredible like reveals in a lot of those end games now. That's like, oh yeah, they're like dealing with some stuff that like they only ever really gestured at. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of my thing. It's like I want Pokemon to, because like when people are like, oh, I want Pokemon games for adults. It's like, no, I don't mean I want them to like. I don't need you to get Pikachu Galactus. I just need you to like acknowledge that there are like emotional complexities to this world that are like really worth examining through the lens of like Pokopia is like actually like a perfect example. Like that game is like, okay, you bill it as like a Minecraft Animal Crossing like, but the entire thing is about like these Pokemon mourning people that are no longer there and like trying to create this like symbol of like in my review for Kotaku, I referenced a lot the song Drag Path by 21 Pilots, which is about like physical manifestations of things that are no longer there. And you have this Pokemon that are just kind of like trying to remake the world that they once knew in hopes that their friends will return to them. And it's like, the more you like read the little lore bits, you're like, oh no, this is like they don't realize now like their friends and family are like gone. Like this has been a very long time they have been asleep, but like they still want to create this like thing that immortalizes the people that they loved, before
Yeah.
everything went to shit. Yeah, it's just like I want more of that. I want more Pokemon dealing with like really, really like complex, thorny, like difficult emotions. Because like that's the stuff that changes. Because like everyone's like, oh, Pokemon for kids, it can be stupid. I was like, that's the difference between something that like occupies a kid for a couple hours and something that like changes their life. Like that's sort of like always been
Yeah.
my perception, like as a a 33-year-old man that like has had Pokemon in his life for almost or more than like more constantly than anything else that I've ever cared about. I'm just like, this series has the capacity to be so much more than it has been before. And again, like it feels like the Pokemon Company at large gets that now and is like trying to embed those themes and feelings and emotions and all those complexities into its world. And so yeah, I don't know if that's like a good answer because like it feels like they're moving that way, but that is sort of I want more of that.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially with Pokopia. I mean, no spoilers for people, but like the end of that game emotionally hit me like a truck. And
Mm-hmm.
it is when you read the pages that are in that game, and part of it felt like it was speaking to you're mentioning they're wanting these people to come back. To me, it felt like Pokemon also speaking to its audience of older fans of like, we
Mm-hmm.
want to create things so you come back to us to experience it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think people get misplaced in that. Just because you want something different from a series doesn't mean you don't want it to still have its roots in what it's doing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want a Pokemon game for adults. It's like, no, you don't. That wouldn't be
No,
what you want. You think you want that. You don't want that.
right.
Um,
It's like
yeah.
I think I said once that like some people's perception of like what is quote unquote for adults is strictly based in like what their mom wouldn't let them play when they were a kid. And so it's like
Yeah, that's a good
when
point.
you think of like you think of like, okay, what is an adult Pokemon? A lot of people are like, I want like those
GTA
like
Pokemon.
yeah, those like parodies you would see on YouTube like in the early 2000s of like a really dark Pokemon story where like slave labor and shit. Like I was like, y'all are missing the plot. But you also look at because like as we're recording this is the 30th anniversary of Pokemon, and there are like a lot of events they're doing right now that are like catered towards adult fans as well as kid fans, and like Pokemon is a lifestyle brand now. So like I have this really nice Pikachu jacket that is hanging up that I'm not wearing right now because it's incredibly hot in New York City right now. But like that's not for a kid. That's clearly like they are making those for adults that have grown up with this and like still view it as a very key point in their life. Um, and so yeah, like, I think by and large, Pokemon has kind of like gotten the picture. Like it's kind of like caught up to. It doesn't have to be this thing that is only for the kids that played it. It can be something that is aging with its fans and like kind of able to cater to a very all ages group as opposed to. Or I think there was definitely a point where they were like, "This is a children's franchise for children, and if you like it when you're an adult, that's weird." I think now they're like, "No, this is for everyone, and we don't have to like sacrifice anything to make that true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Bluey is a perfect point where like it's
Sure.
aimed at kids, but if you watch Bluey for more than 5 minutes, you'll see that the way that show is structured is for everybody to take
Mm-hmm.
something from it. Yeah, and there's a reason people love it and it's been so successful. Real quick, I wanted to mention this: the Pokemon for adults thing. One of the things that drove me crazy, Ken, and I don't know if you experienced this or anything. So when Pal World was coming out, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had some friends who were like, "Oh man, this is the Pokemon game I've wanted. This is so cool." Yada yada yada. I'm like, "This looks not great." And then
Yeah.
being a good friend I am, I'm like, you know what? I love Pokemon. Well, let's all download it and let's all play it together. And I was having an awful time. I do not like that game.
Yeah.
I do not think that game, even removed from its Pokemon connections, I don't think it's a very good video game.
Sure.
And they were like, "Whoa, this is awesome. This is what," and it was the weirdest thing to experience because they're like, "Yeah, this is the type of Pokemon I've always wanted to play," and I'm like, the point of Pokemon to me is for them to be Pokemon, and I don't know, it just was such
Yeah.
a weird experience to deal with people, and they're my friends, but it's like, oh, you don't actually have a connection to Pokemon. You
Right.
have a connection to this idea of what you thought Pokemon was when you played it as a kid, and then you never. I don't know. It was a very
Yeah.
weird experience.
It is like, I mean, I didn't play Power World, but like obviously because it was adjacent to my beats at work. I was, on the beat in some way, and I think obviously I ended up writing a lot about the lawsuits and the allegations and all that other stuff, and that's one side of it. But like I look at that game and I'm like, this is some like weird edgelord shit that somebody makes when they're like 14, and like I'm gonna make the edgy version of the thing that everyone does, because like I'm not a kid
Yeah.
anymore, Mom. I can play with guns and weird, like, I don't know, like I don't.
And it also leaned into the the criticisms for Pokemon is that it's dogfighting. I'm going to lean into these creatures are your slaves. It's like, oh, so
Yeah.
you're just missing the whole point of everything. I don't know. It just was such a weird experience because I kind of hard quit on it. And in the weeks that came, they were like, hey, we should hop on and have a play session of this. And I'm like, I don't want to play that game.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know. It's like, but it's Pokemon. I'm like, no, it's
No, it's
not.
Well, because that's the thing.
And
Like,
then
a lot
also,
of people.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Ken.
I would say, like, for a lot of people, they view Pokemon on this very surface level of like, okay, there are monsters to catch that are cute sometimes, or they're cool sometimes. And it's like, no, like, there's a fundamental like ethos to that world, and like, you don't simply get that just by like putting monsters in balls. Like, you don't get that just because
Yeah.
you have something that vaguely looks like a legally distinct Charizard. Like, you don't. And when people are like, oh, this is competition for Pokemon, it's like, in principle, I don't begrudge people who are like, oh, Pokemon needs competition, because like, anything that makes it do better is worthwhile.
Monopolies
But
are
it's like,
bad.
I also
Yeah.
just like, it's such a cultural pillar now that I think it's not like, it can't be touched in the same way. Like Digimon,
Yeah.
for example, like it quote unquote competes by not trying to be Pokemon. It has like, again, like its own ethos, its own sort of vibe, its own art style, its own philosophies to things that I think lets it just not constantly feel like it's being referential and like trying to be like, I'm trying to beat Pokemon. It's like, no, you're thriving in your own way because you're doing your own thing. Whereas I think
the
a lot
most
of
similar
people
thing is they both end in Mon, really, if you think about it.
yeah, pretty much. And then like Agumon looks like Charmander, kind of.
Yeah.
It is a weird thing of like, having been with this franchise for so long, and to kind of like see these narratives form around it, and like what people believe to be like the problems with it, or like what they believe to be the solutions to everything that has gone wrong over the years. It's like Power World felt like a lot of people swinging at something else entirely that wasn't in the room, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where like they think that because they're getting this like edgy Pokemon, they're like, oh, now Pokemon is gonna have to rethink its entire strategy. And I was like, I don't think that Pokemon is going to suddenly pivot to doing the things that Power World does, just because this other game with legally distinct Pokemon in it is catching a lot of attention. Yeah, I think Pokemon has kind of learned new things that it has to do through its own failures, as opposed to the quote unquote successes of other things.
Well, I think too the problem with Pal World, that's into the loan. We can go on for hours, but specifically with Pokemon, I think also part of it is that, especially with my group of friends, anecdotally, a lot of them stopped buying Nintendo consoles after they played the first couple of Pokemon games and have primarily played on PlayStation or Xbox,
Sure.
right? So they haven't really had a monster catching game like that. So not only was Pal World filling this hole that they wanted to recoup nostalgia from their childhood, and I don't want this to sound gatekeepy by any means, but the last time they played Pokemon was more than 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right? So their perception and judgments and ideas of what Pokemon should and could be, part of me is like, well, you don't know. You're speaking from a point of ignorance. And like I said, I don't want this to come from a point of gatekeeping. Like, you don't need to play every game in a series to know about a series, but a 20, 25, 30-year gap, like that's,
Mm.
you're kind of misinformed on what you're talking about. And what it's a thing that often happens with nostalgia is you're not remembering the thing for what it was. You're remembering it for what you think it was, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
You
such a
can definitely
weird
see that.
thing.
You can definitely see that in like not to keep like belaboring the point. You can definitely see that in like for one example that I go to is like people that are like, oh yeah, Sonic has had like a really bad transition to 3D, and it's like you haven't touched a Sonic game in 20 years. Like you have
Yeah.
like you're talking about things that people talked about on the Dreamcast era, and even a microcosm of it's like okay, like say like live service games now where I remember when Overwatch had its sort of like reboot earlier this year, you had a lot of people that were like complaining about like things that had not been a problem in the game for like several years, and oh, you just like decided that you thought
Regurgitate
one
talking
thing.
points.
Yeah, and it's like I get it. Like not everybody can be like inundated and up to date on a lot of things because there's so many games. There's so much like movies and books and TV shows. Like you can only focus on so much. But also like you don't see me coming out here and talking about things that I haven't touched in 20 years. Like I
Yeah,
don't need to
but
like weigh in. Like I don't need to be the person that's having like the definitive take about something that has changed a lot since I last paid attention to it.
I mean, but that's not to get too into like politics or anything, but I think that's a thing that's happening at large, right? Is that if you're intelligent and you take time and before you speak about something, somebody who cares about what they're going to say is going to at least do a little bit of research, hopefully a good amount of research, and be informed about the thing, right? But there's a lot of people who just think they know the answer or think they know the thing and they just say it, right? I
Mm.
think that's a problem at large is that people would rather speak than learn
Yeah,
and then speak. Yeah, so especially in gaming, obviously everything gets
sure.
ballooned 10 times because of the way the culture is and everything. Okay, the last question before the closing of the show. This is return to sender. Is there anything you'd like to ask me about Pokemon, my relationship with it, anything else? It could be more than one question. It's totally up to you.
So this is obviously not something that everybody, and especially now that we've been talking about this, I was like, I don't know if this would necessarily apply to you. Um, but and then not to put you like on the spot, but, like, do you have like your sixth favorite Pokemon? Like hypothetically, you're in the Pokemon world. Who is that team?
Okay, so I am very neurotic. I am very
Hmm.
introverted. Uh, and though I'm not like officially autistic, I am very much on the spectrum.
Sure.
So I preface with all of this to say that I have a sheet that I
Mm.
refer to that is like I call it my Pokemon Master Sheet, and I basically have a list of like my squads for each generation.
Okay.
Um, I don't think I've ever done it to where I combined everything of like this is my all-time team. I'll do it now for you. This will kind of be
Yeah.
off the dome, so I'm gonna go with it. So the must-haves off the top are Ivysaur and Arcanine. Those are my two
Sure.
favorite Pokemon. Depending on the day, there it goes back and forth, but those are like my all-time favorite two, Arcanine and Ivysaur. Okay, so we got my Grass type and my Fire type. One of my new favorites, actually, and I love this when a new gen comes out because oftentimes we're tied to like our old favorites and nostalgia. It's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, and it's one of the newest ones. I love Tinkaton. I just
Okay.
love this little cute fairy type with the giant Warhammer.
Hmm.
The design to me is so funny, and I love it, and obviously the typing is very good too. So that's three. So I got my Fairy Steel type, got Grass, got um I would say Slowking is one of my favorites.
Okay.
I love Slowking. Specifically the OG, Johto, not the Galarian one's cool, but
Sure.
I prefer the OG. When he appeared talking in the movie, I was just like, this is such a cool idea, especially with, like, I love the idea of Slowpoke being an idiot, and then it becomes Slowking, and it's like this transcendent Pokemon that understand. You know what I mean? It's it's crazy. Ascended, I guess, is what you'd say. So let's see, that's 4. I'm just going through the gens. You know, there's a gap now that I'm noticing between like gens 4 and like 8, where I like a lot of these Pokemon, but now that you're putting me, feet to the fire, if they'd be on my like all-time team, I guess I'll throw Primeape in there. I've always loved Primeape.
Okay.
I'm indifferent on Annihilate. I think it's a cool idea, but the design specifically, I'm not a huge fan of.
Sure.
I think number 6. See, for me, one of my favorite starters of all time is Torterra. I'm like you, I love Torterra. I've always had a fascination with like the mythology of like the world turtle and all that stuff, but I can't have 2 grass types on my team. So I think I'll go with my favorite shiny of all time. I'll go with shiny Metagross.
Okay.
I love that shiny. The silver with the gold. I think it's such a dope design. Obviously, the typing is really good too. So yeah, that'd be my 6.
There you go.
It was tough. I've never done that before. I usually, like I said, I have the teams for each specific generation, but
yeah. I mean, because that's the thing is like my team have had like as my team for like 20 years now. Like they the 30th anniversary of Pokemon is the 20th anniversary of that team for me. And at it's crazy. Like at this point, they've been such figureheads for me for so long that like even the notion of like because my brother also has one of his as well. And I think about like the quote unquote like realistic team. Like okay, if I was actually in the Pokemon world, it's like two of my favorites are legendaries, and I've just like drawn to like the narrative of like one was Palkia, and I'm like I'm really drawn to the narrative of like a god like creating like a bond with a human, like it's something that's very cool to me. And the other one is Latios, and that one is again like tied to my brother. Like Latios is on his team, and but then I think about like I would probably realistically have to switch those with Corviknight and Starmie, who are like my bench team, because like that's just like the realistic like thing I'm actually going to probably come across one day. And it's like I know that's like very it's not even like against the spirit of the series per se, because like the entire idea of catch 'em all, like you're collecting everything. It's just like I just feel like maybe I'm just like I'm too sentimental, I'm too neurotic, I'm too like I don't like the idea of like catching a bunch of Pokemon that I send back to the professor to hold on to me for a very long time. And so even in the games that I play now, like when I'm not necessarily getting all 6 of my Pokemon, I do get at least a few of them. But like I'm like I still largely just try to catch my team of 6. I'm not trying to catch too much to like finish the Pokedex a lot of the time. Except for in the Legends games. The Legends games I did finish the Pokedexes in. Yeah, I it's sentimentality. It's me being like I don't want to like have friends that are like the quote unquote extras that get sent to hang out with somebody else all the time. I don't know. It's something must have happened to me as a child that made me like very sentimental about like the specifics of like what I get attached to. It's probably Toy Story. Was like I'm like too sentimental. Like I feel like all my toys are gonna come to life at some point, and so I need to treat them with care and like they're actually important to me instead of just another thing on my shelf. I don't know.
Well, it could also be tied to earlier you mentioned your pet dog passed away. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Have you had pets pass away? Maybe that's as a kid. Maybe
Well, yeah,
it's
I
like,
mean,
oh, these
definitely.
animals won't leave me.
That's I tell people now that I'm a retired dog dad because the dog that passed, her name was Lily. I'd had her for 16 years, and so like when she passed, I was like I would have been 30 or so. Like I would have had her for like half of my life, and I'm just like I don't have the fortitude to do that again. Like I don't have the fortitude to like get like incredibly attached to something that is there for like a really long time in my life that has to go before I do. And so I'm just like I don't I get attached too easily. That's my thing. Like I get attached too easily to animals and to friends, and I don't like treating anything like it's disposable or lesser than
Oh,
other
for
things
sure, yeah.
in my life.
Real quick, this is a crazy pivot, but
Okay.
I wanted to go back because I'm going to feel bad if I don't mention this. I'm replacing Primeape. I actually forgot one of my favorite Pokemon of all time to put on my team, and that's Mamoswine. I've loved Mamoswine
Okay.
forever. I've always had a fascination with Mammoth. So I was looking through the teams, and I was like, did I miss anybody? And I saw Mamoswine staring right at me.
Yeah.
Caesar and Scyther have always been really cool to me, but they're like they're like the cool kids Pokemon. Like I love them, but I'm like I don't want them on my team necessarily. You know what I mean? Yeah. So is there any other questions you have for me regarding Pokemon?
Oh shit! I got too many. Like that's the thing. If I can yap about
Hit me
this.
with one more. We'll do one more.
One more. What is like the best or like most prized possession you have of like Pokemon merch?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, so I'm gonna start this off by saying I've moved a couple of times in my life, and
Sure.
unfortunately, I've lost some stuff along the way. My most prized possession. That's This is interesting. I'm trying to think because I don't have any of my original cards as a kid. There was a very funny incident where, so I live in New Mexico and we do these fiestas during, obviously like Cinco de Mayo and stuff, and there are vendors there that sell food, sell a bunch of stuff. So in the late '90s, there was a vendor that was selling Japanese Pokemon cards, right? My mom not knowing much about Pokemon, me not knowing much about Pokemon. They were Japanese Pokemon cards. They were legitimate because I've gone back and looked and seen the packaging and they were like real. But obviously that was also a time where there was a lot of like like fake Pokemon stuff too. So my mom was like, "Do you guys have any Pokemon card packs?" And they pulled out the packs and they were Japanese. And I'm like, "Oh, those are fake." I didn't know. And she's like, "Oh, okay," because they didn't have English on them. Why would they be real? You know, just a dumb little kid. So I don't have any of those original cards. I do have. I don't know if this is my most prized, but I would say, I'm thinking, okay, one, it's not like expensive or anything, but my best friend Daniel that I mentioned earlier in the show, for my birthday a couple years ago, one of the things he got me is this really cute custom pin that has Arcanine eating a bowl of ramen, which I thought was really cool. He knows it's my favorite Pokemon, and like I said, we grew up playing Pokemon together. The other thing I have in packaging collection of the gold Pokemon cards from, what was it, Burger King? I have the entire set still in plastic. Obviously, it's probably not worth a whole lot of anything, but it's just one of those things I have. I don't know, man. I'm not a huge merch guy.
Sure.
Like, and also I don't have a lot of space is pretty limited.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else. I have an Ivysaur amiibo, which I think is cool. I was so happy that was the amiibo that they chose for Smash because with the Pokemon Trainer they had all the. Well, I think it's Squirtle, Ivysaur, and then Charizard. I'm excited to see if they actually make cool minifigures for Pokemon with Lego now. I don't really like the build ones that they're doing.
Yeah.
I'd prefer like a single piece minifigure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't really. It's swing and a miss. I think if you have another question, I'll try to answer it quickly. Let's do one more because that was kind of like not in my lane. I'm not a big merch guy.
Sure. I mean, I feel like Pokemon is like the one thing that I have like the most merch of, even though like they're like a lifestyle brand now. So I've got like this. I've got these like half of my wardrobe has the yellow rat on it. What is your?
I want that giant Snorlax, by the way. That giant plush Snorlax that's like human size or whatever. That's like thousands of dollars. If I could have something gifted to me, I would love to have that thing. It looks so comfortable.
Yeah. What is your dream Legends game?
Ooh, okay. The Gen 1er in me wished I want to have a Legends game where maybe you're I don't know if they do it this way. Dream-wise, I would love if it's a Kanto Legends game where it's a rainforest region and you're part of the team that's like looking for Mew. I think that'd be fun. Obviously, it kind of goes outside of what Legends does because Legends, it's like an established city in a different frame. Pokemon Legends Z to A kind of introduced the fact that it doesn't need to be a past region, which I thought was fun. You know what? Here's an idea. Futuristic Tokyo and Japan always looks so sick in sci-fi. It's like one of my favorite aesthetics in all of pop culture, let alone just sci-fi. Give me a game taking place in Johto, like way in the future. So it's like sci-fi aesthetic. which kind of goes directly against a lot of, like we talked about earlier, the traditional Japanese Johto aesthetic. I think that'd be pretty cool. And I'd love to see future. What do they call them in the gen? The future forms. What the hell are they called?
The Paradox one.
Yeah, the Paradox versions of Johto Pokemon. I think would be pretty neat. I think realistically, if we're going less dream and more like realistic, I do hope the next Legends one is Johto. I think that generation in general has kind of been underutilized. Obviously, there's other ones that have, but in terms of like the big ones, Kanto gets a lot of love. Johto kind of gets skipped on, it seems like, here and there.
Sure.
Like even the fact that like Gold and Silver aren't easily playable, and the cartridges themselves have gone up in price. Johto needs a little bit more love. So yeah, I'd go with realistic Johto Legends. Maybe you could do it based off of not Celebi, maybe the birds. I don't know, or the dogs. I don't know what you'd call it.
Maybe the Ho-Oh
Johto Legends. Yeah, that too. Or the because like the Bellsprout Tower stuff would be interesting. Of like what actually that whole thing was. Was it a giant Bellsprout? What was going on there? Yeah, so Johto. I think that'd be my answer.
Oh yeah.
You would be yours.
So my dream one was initially a Kalos one, but set in the past, and so I assume that since they'd made the one set in present day, that's probably not going to happen. Because like I was, what I really loved about Arceus was that it was kind of like watching the history of that world unfold, like in person, and as like obviously as a Palkia fan, like that was very very like it hit really good for me. So I think Johto probably ends up also being what I look at as well. 'Cause, like, I think the idea of like seeing Ho-Oh like revive the beast and like seeing what those Pokemon were initially is one of those like really fascinating unanswered mysteries for me. Because like I even think about like if I want like one in like present day, I feel like what is I have like you're kind of retreading a lot of stuff that like Legends V8 did. It's like, okay, we're building on this city and trying to figure out what like what it looks like for us in the future. I mean there is like the leaks that have said what the next one most likely is, which does sound interesting to me. So I'm not gonna like burn Pod by being like, oh, that one sounds cool, because yeah, it does. But I'm already getting it. So like, what's the point in me trying to dream about it? So. Yeah, I think the Johto history is probably some of the most interesting stuff that has not been explored yet. To me,
I like that answer. They could also do some fun stuff with Unknown. An idea I've had for like the longest time is I would love if there was an evolution to Unknown, but the only way you could evolve Unknown is if you have 5 of them in your party and it spells evolve. Or 6 of them in their party and spells evolve. Yeah. I think that'd be really neat. I wish they did more fun stuff with evolutions. Like Inkay was so fun when you had to turn your DS upside down. I just like when they do stuff that isn't inherently tied to trading or leveling. Yeah, I think it adds a little bit more to the world. Alrighty, we've yapped for a very long time here, Ken. Thank you for joining me. Shout out to you for joining and talking all things Pokemon. If you can, whether it's your writing on Kotaku, your social media, let everyone know where they can find you on the internet.
Sure, you can find my writing Monday through Friday at Kotaku.com. You can find my podcast, which is a Bioware, right now it's a Bioware podcast. It's been other things. But it's called Normandy FM. We're currently playing through Dragon Age the Veilguard book club style, kind of going through like individual quest lines and such and breaking them down bit by bit. We've also done Mass Effect, The Last of Us, Jade Empire, Cyberpunk 2077, Final Fantasy X, 10-2, and Nier. I think I got everything. Yeah, that's we're supposed to be back now on track like every 2 weeks to know if that comes out. And then you can find me on Blue Sky at Shepard CDR.
Awesome. I really loved our conversations. We talked about a little bit of everything, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. For the listeners out there, thank you for checking into the very best. Here's hoping you catch them all, or at the very least, work to become your very best.